Okay, part two. I was getting a little loopy from all my talk about straight lines and curved space. All right, so let's go back to try to recreating. Now that we've got an understanding, hopefully, of just how weird this whole thing can be, let's go back and see if we can recreate the example that we started in with part one. Okay, so let's maybe get rid of a couple of these things here. Let's get rid of scale. And that grid there. All right, so we have this, oops, I still have that dialed in there, 0. There we go. Okay. Right, so I want this one to be rotating, and then if I turn translate off, turn rotate off. So I have one rectangle, and then I want the next one to be just translated over here and then rotate on its own. Right? So we start with the first translation, right? We take the rectangle is at the center of the world, so we're not going to move it. We're just going to do all the movement and that stuff using translate or rotate. So I say I'm going to push this matrix somewhere, and the pushing I'm going to do is half the width, half the height. And then, of course, then I'm going to rotate it, and we'll get this spin. But let's not do that part yet. After I create that rectangle, what happens if I translate the matrix again? This time we'll just do 150 units and 150. And then I'll just take and create another rectangle. And well, let's just see what that looks like, right? So I move this one. So this is right at the center of the world. And then I move this 150 units and 150 units. And let's go back here right after this translate, right? And let's see where the grid ended up here. Each time I draw a rectangle, let's see where the grid is. Right, so I have two different grids. Here's the first one. Remember, it used to be up in the left-hand corner. And this is the matrix that it exists in. And then I moved the matrix, after I draw this rectangle, I moved the matrix again, 150 units, and we put this one here. And after that translate, so let's do the first one and then the second one, right? So the second one, let's do rotate R. So now that one is spinning on itself, right? And you can see the matrix moving along with it. So what happens if we start with moving the world here and spinning it, and as this is spinning it, move it again 150 and 150, and then spin this. And keep in mind, just like we had before, when the mouse X was moving side to side, but it was moving all over the place, it was always moving side to side. It's just that the matrix was rotating. I love talking about this stuff. Right? So now this is rotating. This moves 150 units and 150 units. Look at this skillful mouse positioning, right? And then it rotates on itself here. So I've started to create some interesting motion. Let's turn off the grids. And let's turn off the background. And let's see what happens if we just let it draw. Ooh, you know what I want to do here? Let's do stroke. Maybe 15 by 50. Just kind of a light stroke. Make it slightly transparent, right? So look at this. Two of them rotating. One is rotating based on the first object's translate and transformations, right? We'll say this. Puts this down, and then we transform it some more. We translate it another 150 units in the X and Y, and then we start rotating from there, right? So, I mean, so many different things we could do. I could also, what if I did this? Center mode. I'm just making this part up as I go along. So what if we do center mode? That, and then center mode, corner. So it's going to rotate in interesting and strange ways because it's not rotating from its center, it's rotating from one of its outer corners here, right? So this thing's going to get weird for a while doing its own shape. What if I rotate this at a slightly different speed? Let's rotate it twice as fast on the outer rectangle. Already pretty bizarre. All right, this one's a little bit shorter. So I've already made this complicated by just playing with the numbers, but hopefully you can see at the very beginning, I could still put a grid. Let's do this. Let's turn that one off for a second, and let's actually get rid of these corner modes so we can, let's leave it at center. I don't want to confuse. I just wanted people to see that you could, there's lots of different things that you could do. Right, so here is that grid that's set at the very beginning. Here's this grid, and here's this grid. And let's turn background back on for a second. Right, so 3 different sets of rotation and transformation, translation for each one of these. We're not really doing anything with the first one, though we could. I could just draw something at the very beginning that is circle that's at the center of the screen based on the numbers, right, based on its own X and Y. And then I can just use the translate here to reposition these other objects. And this is really what you want to do. If you're going to rotate an object so that it's rotating on itself, you have to put translate and rotate together. And always do the translate first and then the rotate. Okay. Craziness. Hopefully that helps. So many different things you can do with this. Later on, we can also deal with rotation as it relates to polar coordinates, but we're not going to talk about that yet. All right, happy coding.